5:21 p.m. Eastern, 12 June 2026. 2 frontier AI models went offline for every customer on Earth. No warning, no appeal. 1 government directive. The same month, 2 major accountability frameworks quietly retreated. Consumer protection weakened, access controls tightened. That is the governance pattern of 2026. Does your board have a plan for the day Washington pulls your AI stack? Let's get into it. In May 2026, 2 major AI accountability frameworks retreated. In the same month, a government directive pulled frontier AI from every customer on Earth. That pattern is structural, not coincidental. This is the Hamberger report. I'm Andreas Hamberger, Enterprise Architect and Governance Analyst, Wellington. 2 things happened in May 2026 that were supposed to be the governance story of the year. 11 days apart, the governor of Colorado and the European Parliament both stepped back from their most ambitious AI accountability commitments. Colorado had passed the first United States state law to impose a duty of care on organizations using AI to make consequential decisions: credit, employment, housing, healthcare. On 14 May, Governor Polis signed a replacement that eliminated the duty entirely. No mandatory risk management, no impact assessments, no self-reporting to the Attorney General. Transparency obligations only. Tell people when an automated system affected their outcome and give them a plain language explanation within 30 days. The accountability architecture was replaced with a disclosure regime. 5 days earlier, the European Union confirmed that its Annex III high-risk AI obligations, which would have forced developers of AI used in employment and critical infrastructure to conduct conformity assessments and maintain public registries, would not apply until December 2027, a 16-month deferral of the most demanding compliance architecture in the world's most ambitious AI law. Then a third thing happened. In the same month, Colorado and the European Parliament had both stepped back. A Commerce Department directive arrived at Anthropic at 5:21 p.m. Eastern. Within hours, 2 frontier models were offline for every customer on Earth. No grace period, no warning. No exception for paying enterprise customers. No exception for Five Eyes allies. AWS Bedrock, Google Cloud, Microsoft Foundry, Snowflake, Box, and the direct Claude APIs were simultaneously affected. The suspension reached users at the point of consumption, not the point of distribution. That has not happened before. The legal instrument was a Bureau of Industry and Security letter issued under the Export Controls Reform Act of 2018. A BIS letter of this type is a unilateral administrative instrument with no defined evidentiary standard, no notice and comment requirement, and no administrative appeal mechanism. It is faster to deploy than a formal rule and harder to challenge. The directive's stated basis was a jailbreak. The government understood that a user could ask the model to fix code, to identify software vulnerabilities in a way that bypassed the model's refusal to review code for security issues. Anthropic characterized the same technique as standard defensive security practice. More than 100 cybersecurity professionals signed an open letter against the suspension. As of 19 June 2026, both models remain offline. The governance movements of May and June 2026 form a coherent directional pattern when read together. Consumer protection controls are retreating to disclosure minimums. Access controls are tightening as enforceable state action. That asymmetry is not ideological. It is structural. Retreating, the duty of care against algorithmic discrimination, eliminated in Colorado. Mandatory NIST-aligned risk management, eliminated. EU Annex III high-risk conformity assessments, deferred 16 months. The United States Executive Order on AI Safety Risk Assessments, revoked in January 2025. The common thread is that all of these are obligations requiring ongoing compliance architecture from the organizations deploying AI systems. Tightening, export control access restrictions on frontier AI API endpoints, immediate and global. Mandatory AI use case registers with named accountable owners operative in Australia across 94 Commonwealth entities. The EU's Article 50 transparency obligations for AI-generated content unchanged and on schedule from 2 August 2026. The logic of that asymmetry is worth sitting with. Consumer protection controls are complex, costly, contested in court, and slow to verify. Access and identity controls are binary, fast, and technically enforceable without procedural burden. As frontier model capability crosses into nationally significant territory, governments are reaching for the second type of control. The asymmetry is structural. One type of control is easier to operate at the speed of a capability event. The June 2026 directive is not an isolated event. It is the latest step in the systematic extension of export control authority over AI capabilities, from chips to compute to model weights to live API access. The June event is the first confirmed deployment of the fourth type. The Biden administration's January 2025 framework created an export control classification for closed-weight models trained using more than 10 to the power of 26 computation operations. The Trump administration revoked that framework in May 2025, describing it as overly complex. The June 2026 directive demonstrates a different mechanism entirely. Rather than controlling the distribution of model files, the Bureau of Industry and Security asserted authority over deployed models' live API access, a control surface that reaches users at the point of consumption. The mechanism has no precedent in commercial software regulation. A United States government directive has never before pulled a globally deployed commercial software product's API from every customer simultaneously, on hours' notice, based on contested assessments of a security technique's risk profile. If you want to understand the institutional accountability gap that makes this kind of decision possible, Lethal by Design is running on Fridays on this channel. Episode 6 publishes Friday the 31st of July. It is the analytical companion to what you are watching right now. For enterprise leaders in New Zealand and similar small open economies, the May and June 2026 events exposed a governance gap in 3 dimensions: internal, regulatory, and geopolitical. The third dimension is the one most organizations have not planned for. The first dimension is familiar. Organizations are deploying AI faster than they are governing it. Gartner, forecasting in May 2026, predicted that by 2027, roughly 40% of enterprises will demote or decommission autonomous AI agents after production incidents attributable to governance failures. The second dimension is regulatory. New Zealand's AI strategy, investing with confidence, is explicitly light touch and principles-based. There is no dedicated AI regulator and no binding AI-specific obligation on the private sector, as at 19 June 2026. The third dimension is geopolitical. Any New Zealand organization that has built production workflows around frontier AI APIs has implicitly accepted a dependency on a commercial arrangement that a foreign government can terminate in hours with no advance notice and no fallback. When the directive landed, it carried no Five Eyes exception. Australia knew which AI systems its agencies were running and who owned accountability for each. New Zealand had the GCDO responsible AI guidance. In the private sector, voluntary principles. When the disruption came, both Five Eyes members lost access simultaneously. One had an inventory, one did not. Political leaders in the United Kingdom, Canada, France, and the Netherlands publicly characterized the Fable 5 event as a wake-up call, describing frontier AI model access as the kind of infrastructure requiring sovereign control. For small open economies without domestic frontier AI capacity, that framing matters directly. Frontier AI access has joined the category of technologies alongside semiconductors, undersea cables, and satellite bandwidth, where supply reliability is a national security consideration, not merely a commercial one. The light touch regulatory bet assumes access stability. Access stability is now subject to a control mechanism that a partner nation's government can activate in hours without warning and without bilateral exception. Sovereignty agility, as this series has developed it since Part 9, is the ability to adapt AI architectures quickly to regulatory changes or vendor shifts. The June 2026 event tested it at speed. Organizations that had built production workflows on a single frontier model API discovered they had no sovereignty agility. When the directive arrived, their workflows stopped. 3 practical actions follow. Map your AI dependency surface. Know which workflows depend on which frontier APIs. If you cannot name the model, the provider, and the scope of the dependency, you cannot assess the continuity risk. Design for portability. Architectural choices that make it straightforward to switch providers are now a continuity design requirement. Reassess your governance for the regulatory direction, not the regulatory floor. The instrument that pulled those models offline was an export control mechanism, the same statutory family governing which semiconductors and trained model files may cross borders. Access that depends on a single allied government's administrative discretion, with no treaty floor and no bilateral exception, is not sovereign capacity. The governance gap this series has tracked since Part 5 was primarily internal organizations deploying AI without the oversight frameworks. Their risk profile required. The June 2026 events added 2 external dimensions. Enterprise leaders who built their governance architecture only for the internal dimension are now managing 2 of the 3 gaps and hoping the third does not open. Consumer protection controls retreating to voluntary principles means that if your AI system makes a biased decision about a job applicant, you may have no mandatory legal framework requiring you to demonstrate you assess that risk. The compliance incentive to manage it has weakened. Governance investment, driven by strategic risk management, not by regulatory minimum flow compliance, becomes more important when the flow drops. When someone in Washington can shut down your AI workflows in hours, and you have no plan for that, you have a governance gap. I am Andreas Hamberger, and I will see you next Gen AI Tuesday.
That is the Hamberger report for today. If this was useful, subscribe and hit the like button. It helps more professionals find the channel. You will find links to everything we covered in the description below. I am Andreas Hamberger, and I will see you tomorrow.
Like and subscribe.